Jojo, hello, lovely to meet you.
Hi, Angie, Frida.
And congratulations on the film. You're an incredibly popular writer, but actually, this is only your second novel that's been turned into a film. Your first one was Me Before You. I wondered if making the move to the big screen was something that perhaps you're a bit cautious about, or whether you're very selective about which of your novels are dramatized.
Not really. It was actually just a matter of logistics. I mean, The Last Letter from Your Lover originally got optioned a decade ago, but it was one of those films that just went round and round in production circles for a long time, and the script had to be made right, and then various people were attached and then unattached. And I think some of my books are definitely more adaptable than others, but if I'm honest, I thought this one would be the hardest one of all because it has such a complicated time structure. And what I loved about the script and what Augustine did with it is that they actually made it feel very simple and organic in a way that I wouldn't have been sure was possible.
And you weren't actually involved in writing the script this time round. You did write the script for Me Before You. But
Yeah.
why weren't you involved this time? Was it a conscious decision on your part, or did it
No,
work out that way, seeing as it went round in production circles?
Yeah, well, the original script was written long before I started writing scripts. So what I did do for Studio Canal and with the kind of at the request of the director is I did notes all the way through and we tweaked. I worked alongside Augustine Frizzell, the director, for a lot of it, and we tweaked stuff as we went along. Because I think for some directors, if they can be sure that as a writer, you're not kind of going to blunder in and start making demands and being difficult, if they know that you understand the process, I think writers can be really useful to them because we see the story in a very deep way because we've lived it. And so I think sometimes when you get caught up in the day-to-day demands of production, it's easy to forget that if you take a bit out here, it's going to have an effect later on. Or, I'm quite pernickety about language, for example, and because of the 1960s, there were certain words and things that wouldn't have been used. And so that's the kind of thing that I was doing with Augustine, was just kind of refining and tweaking.
So you weren't totally sort of handing it over to somebody else then?
No, and in
that
fact,
actually make you feel more comfortable about it, because when you spent so long on a project and developing the characters and stories, you can actually feel very protective towards it.
Yes, and I think I've been lucky in that the two productions that I've been a kind of integral part of, I've had great confidence in the director and we've seen things in a very similar way. I'm sure, we all know the stories of writers who've got very upset because the director sees their characters in a different way. So far, touch wood, I've been really lucky.
So you weren't involved that much in the writing side of it. You certainly didn't write the script on this one, but you are an executive producer.
Yeah.
Which I gather is a bit of a first for you.
It is. That came later in the day once the film actually came together and we realized it was going to be a thing. I think Augustine and the producers realized that I would be a useful part of it. And so I did extensive notes all the way through and just tried to, be a useful voice. And then I was on set for a lot of it as well, which I love. I mean, I think as a writer, there is actually no more exciting place on earth than being on a set, watching your own characters come to life. So yeah, I've been lucky again, I guess. I like to be part of it. I hope that I'm diplomatic in the way that I frame requests for changes. And actually, Augustine's such a collaborative worker that it was very easy for us to sort of talk about stuff.
So how did you react when they suggested the idea of you producing, given that it's not something you've done before?
I was delighted. I mean, script writing wasn't something I'd done before Me Before You. And if there's one thing I've learned in my last decade, it's that actually if you get offered an opportunity, you should just take it. Everything's a learning experience. And it's just been, also I had two other executive producers in Shailene Woodley and Felicity Jones, who are very experienced, very smart. And I knew that once they got involved, things were really going to happen. And yeah, once that happened, I wanted to be as close in on everything as I could.
And having your leading actors as producers alongside you is quite something.
Oh, isn't it? I just love it, especially, you know, after we had all that publicity over the last couple of years about women not being at the forefront of productions. What I loved is, in fact, with both the films that I've been part of, they are very female heavy production teams. And I think that shows, because this film is really through a female gaze. And that doesn't always happen. I think it's such an unconscious thing that we tend to see things through the male gaze, that it's really lovely and surprising when something goes the other way.
So would you want to produce again, regardless of whether it was on an adaptation of one of your books or something completely different?
Oh gosh, I think I'd only want to do it on one of my books, because I don't feel expert enough to do it for somebody else's production. And also, to be honest, I'm just too busy. I'm always writing a book and a script, so I don't think I could do anything that wasn't intrinsically linked to my own work. But I think when it's your own work, it does just give you an extra voice. And again, if you can do that diplomatically and carefully, I think it's important to have a voice. That said, I know plenty of writers who wouldn't want anything to do with the whole thing. You know, it holds no attraction for them whatsoever, but I love it. I love being part of it.
So possibly a new career opening then?
Oh, I don't know. I think, you know, my existing employers and my kids might have something to say about that, whether they want me working any harder than I do.
Now, you've been a novelist for, well, a good 20 years, shall we say.
Yeah.
Your most recent novel came out, I think, in 2019. So I wondered if over the past sort of year and a half, you've just been bashing away at your keyboard, and that we can maybe be looking forward to a new novel in the future?
Well, I have started a new one, but I'm going to be honest and say, like some other writers I know, I just couldn't write during the early stages of the pandemic. It was like someone switched part of my brain off. And it's very interesting. I've read lots of sort of psychological studies about why this happens. And it's because your brain basically goes into survival mode, and you start thinking much more about the things that are absolutely necessary for survival. And I think in the early stages, none of us knew what we were facing. And it's taken me till this year to really get my writing chops back in gear. But no, now I'm loving it. I don't want to say too much about what I'm writing at the moment, because I'm always terribly suspicious until I'm over halfway through. I just think maybe it will all fall apart, and I don't want to commit to anything until I know it's really done. But yeah, I will never not be writing either a script or a book. It's just what I have to do.
So given that you're always so busy, the pandemic, or certainly the past year and a half of it, must have been very strange for you not to be writing.
Oh, it was completely. But I have to say, I'd actually arranged to have a sabbatical year, because I'd been working flat out for 8 years with almost no time off. And so I thought last year was meant to be my year of R&R and travel. And of course, the most traveling I did was walking around my garden every day with the dogs. So it didn't really work out in the way I expected. But given what, you know, lots of people have had to go through this past year, I'm not going to complain about it.
Small by
comparison. I think we've all had a bit of a reset. I think we've all just had to work out what's important, and I'm just grateful to still be here, and also just to have my imagination back and working again.
I think we all are. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely to talk to you, and thanks very much for the film as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.